In the next game, Bobby was playing Rudolf Pitschak, and Pitschak was born August 5th, 1902. He passed away September 23rd, 1988, so that's 86 years of age when he died. Now, he was also from Cleveland, and he also was an immigrant, born in the Czech Republic, but became an American that lived in Cleveland, where this tournament was held. Pitschak begins with c4, the English opening, and Bobby with knight f6, the Anglo-Indian defense. This is the line I usually play myself. Knight c3, pawn g6, now pawn g3, bishop g7, bishop g2. Here we have castles, pawn e4, pawn d6, king's knight to e2, ladles and jelly spoons. c5 by Bobby, and white castles. Knight c6, pawn h3 right here. All very usual stuff. Now, the most common move at this juncture is knight e8, and we often see this in order to transfer the knight or to push the pawn on the f-file, or both. If white plays d3, knight c7, and after bishop e3, knight e6 is played. And again, let's look at the annotator to see if this is in the book. Come back a move, and one more, one more, one more. So none of it is in the book. This was the last book move. Oh, wait a moment. You can actually transpose if after d3, a6 and f4 is also transposes to a book line. So rook b8 was played here, and d3 and a6 is a book line if I'm not mistaken. It is. This is your ultra-symmetrical Botvinnik system, isn't it? I'm just looking at it upside down. I play the Botvinnik system as white, one out of maybe 5 or 6 Sicilians. And f4 is one of several moves that white can play here. Now bishop d7 is played. a4, knight e8 as earlier. King h2 and knight c7. You do often see that queen come to c8 and force king h2. But as with any f4 opening, you want that king off of the g square anyway. So play me now or play me later. Bishop e3. a5 does feel stronger. Very thematic idea. But now b5 by Bobby. And pawn takes the pawn, the a-man takes the pawn, and a takes b5 here. The eval bar has black a smidge ahead. Queen d2, and now pawn takes c4. That's the best move. Sometimes you'll see a knight d4 come in, or at least I'm pretty sure. Let me flip it over. Because again, I'm the one usually playing this on the white side. I'm pretty sure I've seen a move like knight d4. It's definitely a playable move. And of course, since the a-file is open, you can play rook a7 and see if you can entice him to come back. Now, if he does come back, it's interesting that you can just offer up a repetition here, right? And get a grandmaster draw. Black might not be all that keen on it because, after all, the eval bar says he's got a splinter's edge. But if it's late in the tournament, it would be a line that you could play and see what your opponent would do. You're no worse for the wear if he comes up with something other than rook a1. All right, anyway, in this game, b takes c4 was played, d takes c4, and rook b4, getting an inaccuracy. The bot calling for the knight to return to e8. I don't know about that. I mean, if I'm not advancing my rook, I might be improving my queen. The queen belongs on c8 anyway in this line. It gets a check mark. Rook b4 by Bobby. e5, opening the long diagonal. D takes e5, and he would like to play knight d4 here. Bishop takes c5, however. I wasn't really expecting bishop to take the pawn there. That pawn's not going anywhere, is it? So I was sort of expecting this rook, one of these two rooks, probably this one, since this one's already on an open file. Because his knight's coming to d4. I get a star for this move. And then I can take this e-man here if I like. Remove one of the defenders. This looks like an interesting line. Let's go back. Bishop takes c5 here. Rook takes the c4. Bishop b6, pinning the knight. Queen b8, breaking the pin and getting a big attack on the b file. b3 was played right here, attacking the rook. Bobby sacrificed the rook for the bishop here. I'm not sure I would have done that. You can play rook b4. He played queen takes the bishop. The bot is calling for rook b4. Pawn takes the rook, and now knight d4. And certainly bishop f5 makes sense there, doesn't it? The biggest issue for Fischer is that white can access an attack on his queen with a rook to the b1 square, and personally I'm using my king's rook since my queen's rook is already nicely placed on an open file. But in this game, that was not played. He played knight takes knight. Yep, the bot agrees with me again. I'm having a good day so far with the bot for the most part. Force that queen somewhere, say queen e6, and now you can infiltrate. Didn't like queen d6. How about queen e6 hitting the pawn? It likes that even less. All right, well, you guys get the point. Just when I was bragging about doing well with the bot today, I got dinged twice in a row. About queen f6. Queen f6, you're asking for some trouble here. Anyway, knight takes knight was played. Queen takes the knight. Queen takes the queen. Pawn takes the queen. Knight e4. Bishop c6. And not preferred by the bot. The bot calling for rook c8 to look at this pawn. That's an interesting move. I would think even bishop to f5 would be a move here. Hit the knight, put pressure, but come from a different direction. What do I get for this move? A check mark. But bishop c6 it was. Bobby's accuracy not as impeccable in this game as it was in the previous game. Rook a7, rook c8, rook d1. Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, that is well defended, so maybe double your rooks or even get your rook on a different open file like b1. What do you think about that? Doesn't like that. I jinxed myself when I said, oh, I'm doing pretty good with the bot today. Anyway, rook d1. King f8, bishop takes knight, seems like it would be called for here. Yeah. You play bishop takes knight, he plays bishop takes the bishop, and then you e5 right here. And if f takes e5, you have bishop takes e5. You're supporting this pawn, and you're glaring menacingly at the king over here. And we're back in favor with the bot with that sequence. King f8 was Bobby's play. Oh, I see. Knight d6 is a discovered attack on that bishop, isn't it? So knight d6 hits the rook, hits the bishop, and at worst, white is thinking, at worst, my opponent ends up with doubled isolated pawns on an open file. So all of a sudden, white is looking better, isn't he? Pawn took the knight, bishop did take the bishop. Of course, there's the threat of bishop d7 here. Knight e6 was played, putting the question to the bishop. And here, Pitschak gets a little cute, or at least he tries to, by playing rook a8, pinning the rook to the king so that you can't take the bishop. Well, Bobby says, well, I'll just trade rooks. Smart. And nonetheless, white should feel pretty comfortable. He's up the exchange. His rook is glaring menacingly at these doubled isolated pawns, although they are supremely defended. But we do have a rook-bishop versus rook-knight endgame. Knight c5 was played, king g2, pawn d3, king f3, and that should be winning for white. All he's got to do now that his king is here defending this square is put his bishop on it, and he'll have a winning position. Fischer tried bishop f3 here, bishop c3 here, rook b1. So if you don't like bishop e4, play king e3. I like both of these moves. I like bishop e4, I like king e3. But Pitschak played rook b1, knight a4 by Bobby Fischer, frowned upon by our fickle bot. Now king e3 was played, and knight b2. Bishop f3 here. You still should consider bishop e4 and attack that pawn. What's it think of bishop e4? Best move. Instead he played bishop f3. And the eval bar is starting to creep back up toward the center. D2 gets the big red X, F5 being called for. Bishop E2. Oh, do we not want to simply blockade this pawn? He played bishop E2, gets the big red X, and is told you should have blockaded the pawn. Now f5 is played, and the bot calling for king e8. But if you're going to get your king into the game, bring it closer to the center and play king e7 and get a star for that as well. Now g4, still same comment as before. White should try bishop d1 here, but he played g4. Now that eval bar is almost dead center. King e7. And I guess king e8 should be considered for some reason. I'm just not sure what that reason is. King e7 is so much more natural here. A, it's on a dark square and your opponent has a light squared bishop. B, it's closer to the center than king e8 is. Why would I play king e8 in this position when I could play king e7? 3, it's 3 squares away from the white king, meaning that black technically has the opposition there. I'm not sure why king e8 would be better. I do know that he's got another chance, he being white, to play bishop d1 here, but he did not play that. Now he played g5. The bot this time calling for rook g1. I still like bishop d1, and I still get a star for it. g5 here, king d7, pawn h4, king c6, pawn h5. Bobby captured the pawn. That's not really necessary. I don't think that's necessary. King c5. Even though you move into a pin, you can even play king b6 here, and you'll be okay. The king c5's got to be better, but yeah, why move into a pin? What's it say to king b6? A star. You probably get a star in king b7 as well, technically. Get a thumbs up. G takes h5 was played. Bishop takes h5. Pitschak offered the draw, and Bobby went ahead and accepted the draw there. Why not? Why would you offer the draw with this position? I guess he was a little bit nervous about that d2 pawn. Rightfully so, I suppose. Okay, I could see if Bobby offered the draw and you say, yeah, okay, but I'm not sure if I'd be the one offering the draw in this position. But they reached the time control. Pitschak made his 41st move and offered the draw, and it was accepted. The numbers are as follows. 87.8 accuracy for Pitschak. Only 84 only. Only 84.3 for Bobby Fischer. The single game rating assessments were 2,400 for Pitschak and 2,350 for Bobby Fischer. Pretty competitive game. Both players had amazing openings. Both navigated the middle game adequately and battled pretty evenly throughout the game.